everybody. My name is Joanne Shango. I am the head of school at the Montessori School Rochester. I have been working in Montessori schools in some capacity for the past 27 years. I started out as a extended care, daycare, if you will, after school work in a Montessori program. From there, I went to the University of Michigan, and while studying for my bachelor's in fine arts at the University of Michigan, I got a job at a wonderful Montessori school in downtown Ann Arbor. It was called Law Montessori School, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. From there, I've worked in public Montessori schools, I've worked in private Montessori schools, some that were nonprofit, some that were independently owned. I've worked as a consultant and a substitute teacher. I've also, in recent years, begun traveling and speaking at Montessori conventions and at schools, helping with teacher education and continuing education as well. I love Montessori. I've been doing it my entire adult life, and yet every day is a new day and every day is a challenge. I was speaking with somebody recently, and I said, I think the most important thing in Montessori is to be very honest about the journey that we take with each of the children. Every day is a new day, and while we strive for perfection, we are perfectly imperfect as guides and for you as parents. And we have to constantly be on the journey of applying what we know to each individual children. Over the weekend, I received some emails from many of you discussing how some of what we've been exploring in this series has been helping, particularly with consistency. It's not magic, it's not perfect the first or the second time that they're applying these methods. However, after a few days of consistency, the work in progress seems to be showing some valuable changes and growth in their children and in the home environment. So I'm very glad to hear that. A question came up over the weekend regarding lying in children. And this is a big challenge. Children do lie, and it happens at a young age. They begin exploring lying at usually about age 3. And when my own children started to explore lying, I looked it up. And the first thing I had read was that lying in very young children under the age of 5 is a sign of high intelligence. And I thought, well, good. So my child is intelligent, but he's still lying. So what do we do? And the lies at age 3 were silly. That's the best word I can make for it. And so I had to challenge myself on how I would deal with it. Would I confront the lies? How would we discuss them? What exactly would happen? And the very first thing that I urge all of you, regardless of the age of your children, is to refer to lying as an action and not as an owned behavior. Therefore, the child might be lying, but the child isn't a liar. And we want to be very careful and cautious of that. If you begin calling your child a liar, then even if that's what it appears to be to you because it's happening regularly or consistently, you want to be really cautious of avoiding that title. Because if you offer that type of title, they might begin ownership of that title. Well, I am a liar. They've told me so, so might as well keep practicing it. So we want to make sure that we avoid that. The next part of that, and I learned this through experience, was I started to tell my children that I understood their tells. So they would say, how did you even know I was lying? I'm like, buddy, you can't even make eye contact with me. And I'm thinking I'm moving him towards like his conscience, And if you can't make eye contact, with me, then that's probably your heart, your conscience telling you you're uncomfortable with what you're saying. Well, rather than that getting him in touch with his conscience, he then began practicing lying more successfully. So he would stare at me and I did do blah, blah, blah. And it was still a blatant lie. And I thought, okay, tells are still there, but now you're working really hard on this, what I would consider an unappealing or unsuccessful behavior. And so I had to really switch gears with my children. And instead we started talking about the lying. And it's a little bit different for each age as they age and stage as they've grown up, how we approach the lying. First and foremost, we discuss, as I encourage you to do, the importance of honesty. In Montessori, we're always talking about what is the positive approach in any form of discipline. When we say no or put up a stop sign, that becomes a challenging behavior, and it usually leads to additional conflict. So we always want to look at the positive avenue that we can take that still addresses the behavior, but instead helps to form a sense of self for them. And so when you are dealing with your young child and they are beginning to lie, instead you want to focus a conversation pretty regularly about the importance of honesty, of integrity, in your family, why honesty is so important. And that can become a regular conversation. And as you focus on honesty as a virtue that you find very important in your family, you can also begin to focus on the moments where your children tell the truth in situations. Oh, you're so honest. Thank you very much for sharing. That was probably very difficult. Let's see how I can help you, right? And that creates and continues to build the open dialogue that we have talked about in past sessions. That is really important for a peaceful and cohesive and productive family unit, as well as in providing the most optimal situations or environments for your children to thrive and grow to their fullest and highest potential. I'm going to pull up a couple of my notes because I want to go over a few things with you that I don't want to forget. First, you want to think about what kind of lies your children are doing and why they lie. Children lie for a variety of different reasons, and it's not simply about avoiding consequences. Sometimes the lies are just extravagant and maybe an extension of creative thinking and thought processes. Sometimes they say things, your youngest child might say things like, my teddy bear did it. And that's a little bit of the creative thinking where you wouldn't necessarily want to call them out on that lie, but you would want to kind of maybe go along with it just a little bit, like, your teddy bear, how did your teddy bear do it? He isn't even able to walk. Why do you think the teddy bear wanted to do that? And that line of questioning or conversation indulges the child a little bit, but it's still asking the questions of why and what happened, which usually leads your children to owning what they had done. Another way of reasoning for lying is they are trying to test the waters on avoiding consequences. And the consequences don't necessarily have to be punishment. If you're not offering punishments and instead natural consequences, it's not that they're trying to avoid, it's really more navigating social dynamics. And so it might be things like, if you use the language that says, did you spill the milk? That feels confrontational, and they'll say, no, I didn't spill the milk. Maybe my brother spilled the milk. Whereas instead, if you point out a situation instead, oh, I see there's spilled milk, let's clean it up. Then they don't have to practice that being on the defensive, because when an accusation, even if you understand that your voice is gentle and kind in doing it, you could say very simply, oh, did you spill the milk? And you can be the most trustworthy person, but they are having a form of conscience, particularly if you're practicing Montessori at home and in school, where in general, when a spill is made, that child takes the responsibility of cleaning it up because the adults don't clean for them. And they didn't, so their conscience kind of comes into play, and they are navigating and feeling all of these different types of feelings and practicing what happens when they do something, what happens when they don't do something. And so that can move them into an avoidance or a feeling of defensiveness, because again, their conscience is at play. And so by using a different form of language that still addresses the behavior, a conversation unfolds as well as rectifying the behavior. So with that spilt milk, if you say, oh, there's spilt milk on the table, let's get a rag and clean it up, there isn't any need for defense for the child. And instead they pick it up up and you say, I wonder how that milk got spilled. And say, oh, when I was eating, I spilt it, and then I da da da. And now an honest and open conversation's happening without the child feeling the need to move into that lying zone, testing those waters of, can I avoid a consequence, or can I avoid my conscience even? Or I don't want to disappoint mom, or anything along those lines. When my son was 3 years old, I think one of the funniest lies that will stay with me forever with him was, we were in the car, and when the windows go down, particularly in the back, it causes an air tunnel in my car, and it hurts my ears. It actively hurts my ears. So the general rule is the windows stay up. If I put the windows down in the front, that's usually an indication, or I'll verbalize that they can put their windows down for a few minutes. But if those go down on their own, it really hurts my ears. So we're in the car and the back window goes down. I'm like, oh, and I used the wrong language, and I said, who put the window down? And my son, who did it and who had been practicing lying, said, you did it, Mom. And I said, I think I would have known if I had put down the window. He said, well, I didn't put down the window, and my sister's in the middle, and she didn't put down the window, and my baby brother can't reach the window, so it had to be you, Mom. And I'm thinking, he must know that I would know if I put down the window, right? And so I found it humorous, and I kind of backtracked and I said, I wonder why I didn't know my hand put down the window. And instead of accusing him, so I'm just giggling with him. I'm like, I can't believe my hand could put down the window without me even knowing it. Here I am driving my car, and we're still driving, and I'm exaggerating this and keeping it very lighthearted, and he just busts out laughing, and he's like, I'm just kidding, I put down the window. And that was an important learning lesson for me. It was adorable, and like I said, it's been at least 9 years, 10 years since that situation occurred. But it really stuck with me, because as I went the lighthearted direction, as he saw that I wasn't necessarily frustrated that the window was down, I just put it up. We kept it lighthearted. He was able to own it and trust in me. And so I laughed and said, wow, you are tricky. You definitely tricked me. Next time, just let me know, because I was really confused, And so keeping that conversation open with the youngest of children really helps. If they're lying about behaviors that can have more, I guess we'll call it negative results. So if they've kicked their brother, or they've torn up a piece of paper that you needed, or something along those lines, if they have done an action that harms somebody else in any way, and then they're lying about it, you want to navigate that a little bit more carefully and try to perceive or see what is the underlying reason that they're lying, and always addressing that. And again, making sure that rather than calling him a liar, putting him on the defense, you want to deal with the behavior first. And so if you say, did you kick your brother? Well, we already know that he kicked his brother. You were probably there. You saw it happen, or the brother came and told you that it happened. Try to avoid that first question, the question that puts anybody on defense, and instead say, what's going on? It seems like everybody's frustrated. Who would like to go first? And you can bring into that situation, particularly with your youngest children, that peace pole or the peace rose that we discussed in an earlier conversation, and discuss the conflict so that you even avoid the opportunity for lying. So if you start with, did you kick your brother? He's looking at you and going, I don't want to get in trouble, right? Whereas instead you say, it looks like both of you are frustrated. Something's happened. Let's talk about it. There's no need for defense, and instead what you're allowing for them is an opportunity kind of to go on offense. And we don't want accusations, but it allows for a conversation to unfold that doesn't need to include lying, or at least minimizes the opportunities or the need that they may feel to do the lying. All of this changes a little bit as your child moves from early childhood into that second plane of development, or that new stage of development in elementary age children, from the ages of 6 to 12. And from the ages of 6 to 12, there's a very interesting component that occurs in all children this age. It is the age of justice. They do not want to see anybody else lie. They do not want to see anything being unfair. And yet they are also practicing lying because they have more experience with their conscience. And so, and that kind of feels uncomfortable. And if you can hide from that, then they're going to try to. It might be, depending on the schools that your children are in, they might be lying about homework. They might be lying about conflicts or situations with their friends. They might be lying about the relationships with their teachers or other children. And we always want to find out what the root cause is. Again, why are they lying? Not how come my child has become a liar, because they haven't become a liar. They are much too young to have become anything. They are really practicing all of these different feelings and all of these different actions that they either see or hear in the world. So the same child that would be so frustrated by another child saying, "Oh, I think so and so did this," and the child said, "I did not," right? And so upset that somebody else made an accusation or lied, that same child might also practice lying. And it's really contradictory and it doesn't often make sense. So as a guide, as a teacher, or as a parent, you want to look a little bit more deeply with that elementary age child in how or why they may be exploring lying. And again, moving it into open conversations and discussions that address the behavior first of the lying and then addresses the situation, because consequences, and this is also with adolescent children or adolescents who are moving between childhood and young adulthood, you want to address the lying as one situation, and you want to address the consequence of the behavior that they were lying about. And those become two different things. As my children moved through their elementary years and into adolescence, we talked often about the fact that the honesty was, again, really, really important. And usually the behavior that they were lying about wouldn't have constituted a consequence. Instead, it would have been a learning opportunity. And however, the lying is now what has been frustrating or what is concerning, and the lying ends up having a larger address to it rather than the actual action, because usually the action was pretty simple. It was something mild, like they left the refrigerator door open or didn't complete a homework assignment. It wasn't anything major, but the lying itself was, because for me, especially as they were growing, we wanted to, have them grow into their best potential and grow into honest children that had integrity, who could be trusted. So we did talk a lot about being trustworthy, and talking about, sometimes I tried to talk about, like, well, why did you feel the need to lie? Now, they don't actually know that, just like they don't know a lot of things going on. They don't quite understand the feelings that they're feeling or the instincts that they are fostering or developing, or why they make the choices that they make, because they're in practice. They're practicing life. It's practice communities, practice societies, and they're practicing some of these things out. Sometimes they know flat out, well, I didn't want Jacob to have it. And so I told him that there wasn't any more. Those are slightly more white lies, but we want to, rather than finding out the why, because children really do not have a sufficient understanding or handle on their emotions to fully explain the why. And instead you want to talk about the importance of being trustworthy, that even with the youngest of children I always talked about, but talked about it more obliquely. With a younger preschool age child, we talked about trustworthiness, and when they were being honest or helpful, I really discussed or commended those situations, not necessarily in praise, but in recognition. You are such an honest person. You are so helpful. You are very trustworthy. It's so good to be able to depend on you. Or, I know I can trust you to make this delivery or to give this message. So I'm shaping them and really focusing on all of their positive attributes, which are much greater than these small lies that they're practicing. with an elementary age child, that language is important. However, as we are really watching them practice more lies, and like I said, as I started to discuss with my child his tells, he started practicing, both of them really, the older two, started practicing more how to lie more successfully. And then sometimes harder or more difficult conversations come into play. If my child has lied about something relatively inconsequential and it keeps happening repeatedly, we have that discussion about how being honest and trustworthy is very important. But the consequence becomes a little bit less than a natural consequence and instead a logical consequence. And I've often had discussions with my children that say, honey, if I can't trust you at home to tell the truth, then how am I supposed to trust you when you're visiting at your friend's home? And you're a trustworthy person. I want to be able to trust you, but right now you're not practicing being trustworthy, and that has me concerned if I'm not there with you. And that is a nudge to their conscience and to the freedoms that they really want to have, while understanding logically that it makes sense. If they can't be trusted in A situation, then in B situation that requires more independence, how can they be trusted? And that's a place where they really want to be trusted. And so it's not punishments. I'm not saying, well, you can't go to your friend's house for 3 weeks or for a day or even for an hour. It's really talking about, I'm uncomfortable because you would be visiting in so-and-so's home with their parents, and you would have to be trustworthy. You would have to be the trustworthy young person that I know that you are. And focusing that conversation with that elementary age child is, I think, very critical in who they are as they are more concretely shaping themselves and practicing in society. They take a little bit more responsibility to that. If they're lying about things that they are doing or not doing, particularly with homework, sometimes they need enough rope to, well, I don't actually like the term. I was going to say to hang themselves, but that's a horrible term, so we won't say that. But sometimes they need to face and really experience the discomfort of getting caught. And they also need to face some of my disappointment and my feelings. Not that I have shame for them. There's no shaming or blaming, but there's conversations that say, you're such a trustworthy person. I really believed you. And now you've let yourself down and you've given an impression to other people, to your teachers or this person or that person, that really thinks highly of you, that really trusts you, and you've given them information that maybe that's not the case, that maybe they shouldn't be trusting you so much. So what are we going to do about it? The other thing I've discussed with my adolescents is your teachers, your guides, this has been going on with some of their homework, trying to grapple with being at home and doing all of this work and not having a teacher or a guide there to work through the learning process. And so for a while they were really resistant. And so some of the conversation was on, your guides, your teachers really love you, and they're not going to quit on you. They love you too much to quit on you. So you can lie and you can keep avoiding the work. But no matter how much you lie about it, the facts speak for themselves. They're not receiving it. They're not going to believe you that you turned it in and they didn't find it, because you've been saying this over and over again. It's not the system. It's not the computer program that they're using. It's none of those things, buddy. And they love you too much to let you quit on yourself. They're not going to quit on you. And that open conversation that allowed him to begin to really realize that no matter how successfully he was able to lie to me or to his father about completing the work or why the work wasn't there, why the teacher somehow magically didn't receive it, going through that experience and really beginning to realize that he was too important, that no one was going to buy the lying that he was partaking in order to avoid what he was doing, helped him face not necessarily even the consequence, but the understanding of his value and the understanding of the value of his words and how he wants other people to perceive him and trust him. Or for my daughter as well, both of them were really going through this. It was that conversation that kept saying, you're a really honest person. I mean, you're a really great person. You're helping, you're kind, you're caring. And right now you're avoiding and you're not taking your responsibilities seriously and you're lying about the work that you're doing. You're trying to hide it. And what you have to know is no matter how much you choose to practice lying, we are not losing faith or trust in you. We're there and we love you too much to fail you. We're not going to believe it, and you're going to have to face that responsibility. Those open conversations with my children really helped guide us through the most difficult times during these stay-at-home orders, and probably the most extreme situations we've had of the lying. I think I addressed this a few sessions ago, but once my son caught up with his work, and it didn't take him much to catch up, his grades moved from the D's that of course would be there if you didn't turn in your work into A's and B's and I think a C plus, and he was just over the moon. He's like, I pulled up my grade to a B plus, I pulled up my grade to this. I'm like, so let's think about this, like, you complete your work, your intelligence shines through, and you feel better, and now your teachers are able to see that the kid that they knew, the kid that they trusted, is as capable as they believed. So you've given them even more proof that you're worth investing in. And that only builds their confidence. Are they going to continue practicing lying? Yep. We're going to see it in a lot of different ways as they grow up. But it's not going to become a habit. It's going to be a tool that they try to test periodically. Some of that is our responsibility. There is a distinction between white lies so that we don't hurt somebody's feeling. There's a distinction between safe secrets. And then there is flat out lies that actually can be hurtful to others or even to themselves. And that's really important. I remember years ago, I used to teach catechism and through my church, and we had a discussion with our students. We do it every year on with the children in the program on safe secrets and why it's really important, no matter what somebody tells you, if a secret or a lie that you're being asked to be told is harmful to you or to anybody else, then no matter what anyone tells you, it's very important to still share that secret. Do not hold on to something that is harmful, whether it's to your own development or to your physical well-being or to other people. You wouldn't hold on to it. So what's a safe secret or what's a white lie? And how are those different? And with those groups of children year after year, we talked about safe secrets. A safe secret might be mom's asking if you're going to throw a surprise party for her and you don't want to blow the surprise. That's a safe secret because the secret's only, when it comes out, is only going to bring joy. Okay? White lie might be somebody asked, you like my sweater? And you're looking at going, I'd never wear that sweater. And I'm sure your children have heard you say it. I'm sure my children have heard me say, I'm like, oh, the sweater, is definitely to your taste, right? Or something along those lines. Or you could say, yes, does it make you happy? But really you're thinking, I don't like the sweater, or I prefer your hair short, or those white lies that are just to avoid hurting somebody's feeling. When children experience those and see those, they dapple with them, and there is a fine line that they don't quite understand because they're thinking in the bigger lies, this is going to protect me, right? If I don't want to do the homework makes me sad, homework makes me miserable, or the spilt milk, I don't want to clean it, or my brother keeps taking my stuff, so I pushed him, but it helped me because he won't take my stuff. It's a blurred line, right? Whether they're 3 or they're 5 or they're 12 or they're 18. And so we want to really address it with any age of these children. We want to address it in open conversations that really talk about the importance of honesty, the importance of integrity, the importance of communication. We want to make sure that we are not seemingly antagonistic or accusatory in our approach in finding it. And we want to make sure that they understand that even though they're honest, it doesn't mean that there isn't going to be a consequence, once for the behavior in lying, and two for the behavior that they were covering up. We want to be careful, particularly with adolescents and older children, older elementary children and adolescents, that they don't confuse those lines and we don't confuse those lines. You can be proud or encourage them to be proud of themselves for having been honest, while still saying the consequence for the actual behavior, because that behavior was concerning. And I'll use an example that I actually read in a novel recently, which was an adolescent that was at a party and drinking. She might have had a beer, but the person that was with her, that was driving, had a few beers. Party was getting out of control, and she decided to call. And that's really, really important. She was honest. She said, I'm in an uncomfortable situation. When you asked if she was drinking, she was honest with you, and then you punish her because, right, punish is a strong word, but we like to say consequences, but there's still a consequence, right? And it might be losing the privilege of going out until she understands the gravity of those kinds of choices, whatever it is, but there's going to be a consequence of some sort. And she says, but I was honest with you. If I'm going to be honest with you and you're still going to give me a consequence, then why should I even be honest? Don't allow your child, whether they're 3 or they're 7 or they're 12 or they're 18, to make you feel guilty about still offering a consequence for the behavior even after they've been honest about the behavior. Those are two different things. Lying is one thing, and the behavior. So if we talk about a young child that kicked and he says, I didn't kick him, and then you say, honey, his body is hurting. I was right here. He told me that you kicked him. Tell me what's going on. You have your peace meeting. Just because they own the behavior, they're no longer lying, doesn't absolve the consequence of the other action, right? And because they are two different things. So you want to promote honesty. You want to promote conversations with your youngest children that are 3 or 4. You might indulge a little bit in the conversation that instead leads to an honest disclosure that it was indeed not the bear, and instead it was them that created a fort in the family room. We want to lead to that, and we want to talk about and always focus on why honesty and integrity are very important. But we always want to make sure that they understand that consequences are okay. And it's not a punishment. It's not something to be ashamed of that there was a mistake that was being made. Instead, it's a learning opportunity. And we can only learn from the opportunity when we own it, when we discuss it, and we practice how we might do it differently. And that can only come from being honest. I hope this conversation helped all of you. If you have any other questions about honesty, if you feel like I didn't quite touch something that maybe is what you've been experiencing, go ahead and send me an email or send a message here on Facebook in the comments below, and I will try to move into more detail in a situation that is of concern to you specifically. We thank you all very much for being here. We love you. We miss you. We hope you have a great day, and we can't wait to see you in person. Bye, everybody.